Howdy folks, my name is Richie, aka Bog Otter, and welcome to Things You Oughta Know. This is a relaxed, kind of casual video that I'm going to do periodically to answer questions that my Patreon supporters have asked me. These can be questions that are gaming related or non-gaming related, and I have a list of questions over here. And if you don't know what Patreon is, this is a crowdfunding website where people can support the work of content creators like myself. One of the perks that I offer people that actually, pledge to the sea otter or river otter level is that they can ask questions that I'll answer in a video. And if you are a sea otter, then you actually get a monthly shout out in one of these videos, and I'm going to do some of those as well today. If you want to find out more about how you can become an otter and support my work on Patreon, there is a link to the description below. I'll probably also throw up a link somewhere up here, and I encourage you to go check that out. So today we have 3 shout outs to do. 2 of them are returning shout outs. Shout-outies. I have 3 shout-outs to do, 2 of which are old. The people aren't old. The actual... All right, I have 3 to do. Let's start. The first one is the brand new shout-out from Kim Dool. Kim Dool, thank you so much for becoming a sea otter. She's also known as Pikachu in WildStar. As of the head start, she's going to have, I believe, a pink Chua named Pikachu, which kind of makes sense, Pinkachua. And she is the admin for the official WildStar Wikia. Okay, so I'm going to put a link to it down below so you can check it out. But it's wildstaronline.wikia.com. And it's a wiki. It's a database of information about WildStar, and it is the official Carbine, certified Wikia. But what does that mean exactly? They helped give art assets and information to help populate the site, but they don't actually do any of the contributing themselves. It is still run by a bunch of admins over there, Kim Dool being one of them, and they they basically organize the information, make it look really pretty and easy and accessible, and people can go there to get a wealth of information about WildStar. So it's Carbine supported, but it's still fan driven and fan contributed. Fans contribute to it. And yeah, it's a great resource for those of you who are excited jumping into WildStar like I am. So go over there and check it out. Links in the description below. And Kim has been a longtime fan of MMOs and has a huge history. You can check out her bio page on the site as well, and she's just really excited to be able to contribute to a game that she's super excited about. So thank you so much, Kim, for becoming a sea otter, and I wish you lots of luck with the site. Now, my next shout out is for Mark Thomas, aka Workhorse. He is the guild master, guild leader for Die Trying. This is a WildStar guild. They are on the exile side, and they recruit people for a casual, community-driven guild that wants to do all aspects of the game: raiding, PvP, the whole works. They recruit the person and not the class. They want to have friendly, helpful people, and it doesn't really matter what class you're playing. So I'm going to put a link to his website down below, but in case you want to hear it from my mouth, it's www.die-trying.org. So if you're interested in an exile guild in WildStar that meets those criteria, go on over and check out Die Trying. Thanks so much to Mark once again. And my last and final shout out for this episode is to Falco. He is a YouTuber. He has a YouTube channel called Top Hats and Champagne. Once again, I'll put a link in the description below. And it's a gaming channel, and it's quite different than a lot of the channels out there that I've seen. He's very, he does humorous videos. It's very well produced. He has a great green screen effect that he uses. He uses costumes and scripts and comes up with funny videos. One of his new series is called Champignonated, where he kind of talks about different topics that are gaming related and shares his opinions about them. One of his most recent videos is about WildStar, 5 things to do when WildStar launches, and they give some good advice on how to kind of relax and really soak in the launch and tune out some of the noise that usually accompanies mass amounts of people flooding into a game. And so I encourage you guys to go check out his channel and subscribe over there and check out that top 5 WildStar video. And now it's time for Things You Oughta Know! Okay, first up, I have a question from Mark Thomas, and it's a doozy. Why do people dislike subscription-based games so much? If you want top quality content, then paying a subscription shouldn't be such a heartache, right? Successors like Eve and WoW have proven that subscription models work with the right type of game, while others like SWTOR have flopped. Still, I have to believe that gamers will continue to pay for a game as long as the content holds up to its value. What are your thoughts on this volatile subject? Yeah, it is a contentious topic, and it always comes up around the launches of MMOs. My opinion on subscription models is there's two things at play here. One is there are many different types of business models that can work perfectly well and be perfectly successful for an MMO. I don't think there's any one magical formula. If that was the case, then every MMO would go for it. I think it's important for an MMO company to decide way early in their development what kind of business model they're going for so they can structure the game around that business model. A lot of times when a game doesn't feel quite right, it's when the business model and the actual game mechanics and game design aren't in sync. But the subscription versus non-subscription model, that becomes more of a personal preference thing. And the reason why I say that is, like, for example, we know that games that have a subscription fee can be successful, all right? So you name two of them, Eve and World of Warcraft. So it can work in those situations. We also know that there's some games out there completely free to play, like you don't even have to buy a box, and they can be very successful. And we also know that there's hybrids like Guild Wars 2 where you buy the box, but there's no sub fee, and that can work really well. And the key is, something that you mentioned in the question, the key is the game has to be good. The game has to be fun, and as long as that is in place, and the business model isn't too, like, money grabby. Like, you can have a great game, but if the business model, like, is obviously trying to, like, nickel and dime you all over the place, then that's going to put people off. But as long as the business model is a sound business model, and that the game has really quality content, then people are going to be drawn to it regardless of the style. Why do you see so many people that don't like subscriptions? Well, a lot of people don't want to pay a monthly fee. I personally don't want to pay a monthly fee, and if you look at some of my earlier WildStar videos back when they first announced the business model, I wasn't thrilled about it, and a lot of that comes from the fact that I know from playing Guild Wars 2 now for almost 2 years that having no subscription model doesn't mean you're not getting frequent quality updates. I mean, Guild Wars 2, for a lot of its life so far, has been giving out updates every 2 weeks. I mean, right now we're in a little bit of lull. We're waiting till July for the season 2 of the Living World to start, but every 2 weeks they were coming out with patches, and some of them, some of them were a little bit filler patches, but some of them were really great and had some awesome new stuff in it. So it's not necessarily, I don't buy into the marketing strategy where they say, hey, you're paying a monthly fee so that you can get lots of cool content updates, rapidly. I don't necessarily buy into that because games like Guild Wars 2 have proven that you can get those kind of quality frequent updates without a subscription model. But it's just a different mindset. If the game is going to be structured in a way where you have a gem store, and you're giving out just cosmetic and convenience items only, not pay to win, then something like Guild Wars 2 business model will work. Whereas WildStar's case, they want to give you everything in the game and not have a cash shop, at least right away. And, that's the business model they chose. So I don't think there's one good or bad. It's just a kind of a personal preference thing. And, I know there's some people that love subscription models because they feel like they're not going to get nickeled and dimed, right? They don't want to see a whole bunch of stuff on the cash shop that they feel like that, they need to pay for, extra for, and they also, want it to be full of people playing that are committed to the game, right? If you don't have a subscription model, you get a lot of, riffraff in there, and, oh my goodness, these people that aren't really, excited about the game or don't really love the game and they're playing. So, I don't know. There's a lot of things you can kind of dive into this topic, but I, in general, think that, either subscription model or many subscription models or many. So in general, I feel like many business models can work for the MMO space, and really why you hear so much, back and forth about it is because there's so many people that just have a personal preference, and they are giving their opinion about their personal preference, and people prefer different things. So I hope that kind of wraps up that question there. And that was a little bit of a long-winded answer. Next up, we have a question from Nathan who asks, what was the first RPG you ever played? First RPG I ever played, and I'll kind of expand this answer because otherwise I could just give a real quick one, but the first one is probably Adventure on the Atari 2600. That, if you consider that an RPG, you were a little dot on the screen and you ran around, with a sword that looked like an arrow, and you killed dragons that looked like deformed ducks. And so it was a very, primitive game, but that was really probably my first RPG that I played. Now, some other ones that are noteworthy in like the early 80s, like I think in 81 or so, the first Ultima came out. I played the first Ultima. I love that. My favorite old school RPG, and I showed it on one of my videos. I actually have the floppy disk like right over there. I can see it. Bard's Tale. I think that was like 85 or something like that. The Bard's Tale, I absolutely adored that game. I used to play with my my dad a whole bunch, so I have a lot of fond memories. We used to map out the dungeons on graph paper, and that was probably that's probably my favorite RPG of all time, just because it's so nostalgic and there's so many memories attached to it. I played almost every fantasy role-playing game that came out in the 80s. I was just addicted to them. I was addicted to the Gold Box games and the Might and Magic series and the Wizardry, RPGs. So I love all of that stuff. So that was probably my first one. You also asked what's your most memorable boss battle in RPG. And I don't know. I'm having trouble kind of thinking that. I'll just mention a fight in Bard's Tale, which I still to this day remember. There was an encounter that wasn't random. A lot of the fights in that game were random. There was an encounter where if you went to a specific spot in a specific dungeon, you would fight 4 ranks of 99 berserkers, 99 berserkers, 99 berserkers, 99 berserkers. So it was a whole, it was like almost 400 creatures you were fighting against, and you would cast these spells that could be like AoE, that could affect a whole group of monsters. And if you cast the AoE spell, which was the only way to really beat one of these fights, you had to watch the text scroll, and it would burn every single, it would be like, a berserker was burned by your fire spell for 100 damage. The berserker dies. And then that was like one entry for one berserker, and you had to watch that list 99 times every time you cast a spell. So that was one of the most memorable fights. We would do that. It would take forever to beat them, but they always gave out really good experience and treasure. So I hope that answers your question. Thanks for the question. Next up, a question from Talifalana, who asks, what kind of numbers do you think or hope for WildStar will put in after the first month, 3-month, and 6-month milestones? That's hard. That's really hard, because you know what? A lot of MMO companies, besides like WoW, a lot of them are very kind of tight-lipped about their numbers. So it's hard to kind of even gauge, how successful some of these could do. I expect WildStar to be a successful game. I don't think they're going to knock it out of the park with numbers, at least in the beginning. It's a brand new franchise, and it's a little unproven. And I think, and I've talked about this before, I think one of the things that hurts the game is the beginning of the game feels a lot like every other MMO. And I think a lot of what makes WildStar special is at the end game. So I could see people trying it very quickly and then dropping out, or if they've already played in the open beta and aren't going to pick it up. But I think Carbine has spoken about this, and I kind of agree that what they're hoping for is there's going to be a spike of people playing the game at launch, and after a month or two, every MMO has a big drop-off at that point. All right, people get bored, move on to different games or whatever. And the key is after that kind of like volatile beginning period with the spikes, the peaks and the valleys, that as they implement new patches over time, as long as they start to see a slow, steady growing of their user base, it's very difficult to do. Not many MMOs are able to do that. But as long as they start to grow after the first few months, it doesn't matter if it's a quick growth or a very slow, steady growth, then that game can be successful. And so that's my major hope. I'm not really putting any numbers to it. I don't know, because I just have no basis of comparison to even say that. I know they had over 1 million people sign up for beta, and that would be a great milestone to be able to tout that they have 1 million subscriptions or something like that. But I don't know if they can get those kind of numbers, and I'm not even going to hazard a guess because I just don't know. I don't know. Next up is a question from Falco, who asks, "What are your thoughts about PvE, PvP, PvE, RP, and PvP RP servers?" That's so hard to read. Okay, he's asking about what are my thoughts about the different types of servers you can find in an MMO, whether it be PvE, PvP, etc., or the role-playing ones. And which do I prefer? Well, I prefer, if it was completely up to me, I don't have to worry about anybody else, I would probably choose PvE servers most of the time. I know some people really dig the kind of like spontaneity that can arise from a PvP server. Like once you're in a contestant zone, you don't know, there's the content that you're trying to do, but there's also the content that is the other players, and there could be some fun skirmishes back and forth. And I think that, I haven't played on a PvP server. In fact, I'll talk about this in a minute, but in WildStar, I'm going to be on a PvP server for the first time, so I'll see what it's like firsthand. But I think, like, if you're in the mood and you got plenty of time and somebody jumps out of the woods and ganks you in a PvP server, and then you like get your friends on voice chat and your guild comes over and you gank him back, and then they get their friends, and you just have this like impromptu kind of like war develop, I think that could be pretty fun. But let's say I just have like 15 minutes to log in and I just want to get a quest or two done, and I don't have a lot of time, and if I'm trying to turn something in and like just somebody's being a jerk and killing me over and over again, and I'm just trying to get this one thing done, I can see that being really irritating. So I think I have mixed feelings about it, and I think that's part of why it's fun for some people, is because you just don't know what's going to happen. But I would tend to gravitate towards a PvE server most likely. Role-playing servers, I don't have much experience with role-playing servers. I don't see me having kind of a problem with those at all, because it would probably be an interesting community to kind of to see how that whole thing works. But in general, PvE servers where it's at for me. Now, just somebody else asked this question. I'm going to get to some of his other questions, but some people were asking what server and faction I'm going to be playing in WildStar. As of right now, things could change in the next few hours, but it looks like my guild is going to be on a PvP server in WildStar called Pago, and we're going to be on the Dominion side. So there you go. And I am planning on having a circle in game. This is kind of like a community. It's kind of like kind of has some of the features of a guild. It has chat and a roster, but it's not actually a guild, it's a circle. I'm probably going to have a Bog Otter like community circle, so people can join in there and we can chat and stuff like that. So if anybody's interested in that. So next up, I have a question. I have two questions from Nerdy Mike before we get out of here today. The first one is, what made you decide to go into streaming and YouTube video making? I'm going to give you the short answer because I've been thinking about doing a whole video just dedicated to my steps to progressing through this wacky career that I've been going after. So in general, what happened was I've always been interested in video games my whole life. It's just the number one thing I've been passionate about, and I spent 12 years managing like client services, call centers and stuff like that for different software companies. And I was working in Manhattan as a vice president of client services, and I got laid off about 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago. I got laid off, I couldn't find a job, and my wife went back to work as a physical therapist, and we swapped roles. I stayed home with my kids, who were, I think, 5 and 3 at the time. So I became a stay-at-home dad, and once they started to get a little bit more self-sufficient, I had a little bit more free time around the house, I started doing writing and making videos about video games just to try to, start a career in gaming and maybe make a little bit of money on the side. And it took several years before I started making any money, but that's how I got into it. That's like the whole start of it. But like I said, there's more to that story. I'd like to kind of tell you about each little step someday, because I think it's kind of interesting, because you start going down a path and you have no idea where it's going to lead, and sometimes that just walking down the path is worth it, just to see what kind of doors open up. All right, so, and finally from Nerdy Mike, he asks, how did you come up with the name Bog Otter? So I've described this a few times before on stream and stuff because it seems to be a common question. Like, I wish I could go back and watch the Bog Otter being born, because my memory of it is basically my friends and I were at my mom's house, and she lives on the water of a lagoon, and the lagoon is brackish, kind of like murky-ish water. So, and you know, this is when we were younger, and we were in there with a whole bunch of tubes and rafts and, you know, noodles and, you know, water guns and all kinds of stuff, and we were basically just wrestling and, you know, horsing around in the water, and we just came up with super swamp hero identities for ourselves. So we had one guy who was like Crocodile Rock, and one guy was the Froghemoth, and one guy was the Incredible Bulk, and I was the Bog Otter, and I was just like this wiry, like skinny, kind of mischievous guy, and all my other friends were like big and strong, and I was just like this, I don't know, in my head it was like this dexterous, kind of thiefy, kind of otter guy, snarky. And that's when the Bog Otter was born, and it's stuck with me since I was a kid. And not that people call me in real life Bog Otter, but it is always, I love otters. It's one of my favorite animals, and when I met my wife, otters were one of her favorite animals, so it just really kind of solidified the whole, yeah, Bog Otter is the online name I'm going to be going for. So that's kind of the history of that, and it's just kind of stuck. Yeah, and turns out that some people in different parts of the country, different parts of the world, other countries, have since written into me and it's like, hey, I love your videos and everything, but did you know that in my country the word bog means toilet? I'm like, great. So I'm the toilet otter in some locations around the world. So that's going to wrap things up. Thank you so much to my Patreon supporters for actually asking all these questions. I had a lot of fun with it. If you want to ask me questions for future episodes, go over to my Patreon page down below and go ahead and pledge at the River Otter level or above. I would really appreciate all of the support that I get over there, and it's a nice little community we have. We can kind of chat behind the scenes, and I post polls asking for opinions on different things, and yeah, a lot of people seem to be really enjoying themselves over there, so I would love it if more people would kind of sign up over there as well. So that's going to wrap things up. Hit that like button, favorite, subscribe to the channel, and go over to Twitter at Richie Procopio, Facebook page /Bog Otter. All the links, all the stuff is down below in the description. Hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. And for those of you who are playing WildStar, have a great head start. Goodbye!